Commander Trazak of the Galactic Coalition Naval Academy was not having a good day. Actually, he hadn't had a good day since the humans joined the program, particularly since that one human female cadet arrived. "Commander, the integration reports are ready for your review," Lieutenant Krex said, his forearms extending the data tablet with practiced efficiency. "Wonderful," Trazak muttered, his scaled skin rippling with annoyance. "Another round of reports telling me how spectacularly we are failing at making these humans function within basic military parameters." Krex shuffled uncomfortably. "The humans are adapting, sir." "Adapting? Is that what we are calling it now?" Trazak's secondary breathing vents flared. "Cadet Anderson hasn't spoken a single word in 3 weeks of training. Not one. How is that adapting?" "Well, sir, she follows orders perfectly. Her performance metrics are—" "I don't care about her metrics, Lieutenant. The point of the Apex Command program is to develop officers who can lead, communicate, and make decisions under pressure. Not mute statues who can run an obstacle course." Trazak had been running the Apex Command program for 22 cycles. In that time, he'd trained officers from 47 different species. Some had tentacles, some had hive minds, and one breathed sulfur dioxide. But none, absolutely none, had confounded him like the humans. Especially Cadet Maya Anderson. "Sir, perhaps we should consider that the human may be employing a strategy we don't yet understand," Krex suggested. Trazak snorted, sending a small jet of steam from his nasal cavity. "A strategy? Please. The human hasn't responded to provocations, challenges, or even direct questions. She just stares, with those weird, wet eyeballs. The psychological profile suggests. The psychological profile is useless. Their military sent us incomplete data. We know nothing about Anderson beyond her basic physiological specs and service record." Krex tapped a note into his personal device. "I have scheduled the final Apex Command challenge for tomorrow, sir. All 23 cadets will participate, including Anderson." "Hey, I almost want to see this. 22 of our finest officer candidates, and one silent human who will probably just stand there while the simulation runs its course." Trazak rubbed his ridged forehead. "Who's she paired with for the challenge?" "Cadet Drazen, sir." "Drazen? The Valerian? Oh, this is going to be a disaster," Trazak groaned. "Drazen hasn't stopped talking since he arrived. He will probably talk through the entire challenge while Anderson stares at the wall." "Actually, sir, the pairing was determined by their complementary scores in tactical assessment." Trazak blinked all 3 of his eyes in rapid succession. "Are you telling me that Silent Anderson scored high enough in tactical to be paired with our top cadet?" "Highest complementary score in Academy history, sir." "Impossible. She hasn't engaged in a single tactical discussion." "How could she possibly?" The Academy alert system chimed, cutting off Trazak's rant. A glowing red icon pulsed on his desk interface. "Now what?" he growled, pressing the icon. The voice of Security Chief Veller filled the room. "Commander, we have a situation in Simulation Lab 7. Cadet Drazen and Cadet Anderson were conducting an unauthorized training session and, well, you should come see this." "On my way," Trazak hissed, already moving toward the door. "Krex, with me." As they hurried through the Academy's gleaming corridors, Trazak's mind raced. What could those two possibly be doing? Anderson hadn't shown initiative of any kind since arriving, and Drazen was too by the book to break protocol. When they arrived at Simulation Lab 7, a small crowd of cadets had gathered outside. They parted quickly at the sight of Trazak, their various appendages snapping to attention postures appropriate for their species. Inside the lab, Trazak found Security Chief Veller standing beside a bewildered-looking Cadet Drazen. The tall, blue-skinned Valerian was gesturing wildly with his 4 upper limbs while his lower limbs remained perfectly still in the formal stance of his people. And then she just, "I don't even know how to explain it, sir," Drazen was saying. "Cadet, compose yourself," Trazak ordered. What happened here? Drazine's antenna twitched nervously. Commander, I invited Cadet Anderson to run a practice simulation for tomorrow's challenge. I thought perhaps she was silent because she didn't understand our protocols, so I wanted to help her prepare. Go on, Trazak said, his patience wearing thin. We entered the Carvax Nebula scenario. You know, the one where you have to negotiate with the pirate coalition while secretly preparing to disable their flagship? I designed the scenario, Cadet. Yes, sir, sorry, sir. Well, we began the simulation, and I was explaining the diplomatic approach when Anderson just took over. Trazak narrowed his central eye. Took over? The silent human? Yes, sir. She actually spoke. She asked the simulation to increase difficulty by 300%, then she modified the parameters to include a Taurian war fleet and quantum instability in the nebula. Security Chief Veller nodded. Difficulty modifications of that magnitude require command-level authorization, sir. The system shouldn't have allowed it. And yet? Trazak prompted. And yet she did it anyway, Veller said. She bypassed security protocols that even I don't have access to. Trazak turned back to Drazin. Then what happened? She ran the simulation, sir, but not like anything I have ever seen. She didn't speak to the pirates at all. She just watched, for 20 minutes. No movement, no commands, nothing. I thought the system had frozen. And then she pressed a single button on the tactical interface. Just one. And the entire scenario resolved. Pirates neutralized, hostages rescued, Taurian fleet pacified. Nebula stabilized. The simulator gave her a perfect score. The system said it was the most efficient resolution in Academy history. Trazak felt his scales tighten against his skin. That's not possible. The Carvax scenario requires a minimum of 17 decision points to resolve successfully. That's just it, sir, Veller said. She somehow reconfigured the scenario parameters so that a single action could trigger a cascading resolution. The computer is still analyzing how she did it. Where is she now? Trazak demanded. She walked out after completing the simulation, Drazine said. She looked at me and said, "That's how humans negotiate," and then just left. Trazak felt a headache building behind his central eye. Find her. Bring her to my office immediately. Yes, sir. Veller hurried out. Trazak turned to the simulation console and began reviewing the logs. What he saw made his blood run cold. The human hadn't just modified the scenario, she'd rewritten the fundamental logic of the simulation itself. With a few simple commands, she'd created a solution that shouldn't have been possible. Sir, Krex said quietly, I think we may have underestimated Cadet Anderson. You think? Trazak snapped. She's been watching us. All this time she's been silent because she's been studying our systems, our protocols, our thinking, and we thought she was struggling to adapt. A chime from Trazak's communicator interrupted his revelation. Commander, Veller's voice reported, we have located Cadet Anderson. She's in the mess hall, eating. And sir, she's talking to the other cadets. What is she saying? Trazak demanded. She's teaching them, sir. Teaching them how to think like humans. Trazak felt all three of his hearts skip a beat. I will be right there. The mess hall was usually a cacophony of various biological sounds, eating, breathing, communicating in dozens of different languages and methods. But when Trazak entered, he found an unnatural quiet. Every cadet, representing species from across the galaxy, was gathered around a single table. At that table sat Cadet Maya Anderson, the human who hadn't spoken for weeks. So you see, she was saying, her voice surprisingly melodious to Trazak's audio receptors, human warfare isn't about domination through superior firepower. It's about finding the single point of maximum leverage. Like in the simulation, a tentacled Grenthar cadet said, one action that causes everything else to fall into place. Exactly. Anderson smiled, revealing those strange, flat teeth that humans possessed. We call it asymmetric advantage. Find the one thing your opponent can't afford to lose, and make that your target. Cadet Anderson, Trazak interrupted, his voice cutting through the rapt silence. The human turned to face him, and for the first time, Trazak felt a chill run down his spinal ridge. Her eyes, those wet, expressive organs, seemed to look right through him, analyzing and categorizing. "Commander Trazak," she said, standing and offering the coalition salute with perfect form. "I was just having a discussion with my fellow cadets about tactical philosophy." "I can see that. May I ask why you have suddenly found your voice after weeks of silence?" Anderson's face formed that expression humans called a smile, but Trazak had studied enough human behavior to know this wasn't a friendly one. "I was listening, sir. Learning. My instructors always told me to understand the battlefield before engaging." "And you consider the academy a battlefield, Cadet?" Trazak asked, his tone dangerous. "Every new environment is a potential battlefield, Commander, especially when you are the only human in a program designed by and for non-humans." The other cadets shifted uncomfortably, many of them moving subtly away from the confrontation. "Report to my office immediately, Cadet," Trazak ordered. "Yes, sir." She nodded to the other cadets. "We will continue this discussion another time." As Anderson followed Trazak from the mess hall, he couldn't help but notice the way the other cadets watched her go, not with the disdain or confusion they'd shown for weeks, but with something new. Was it respect? Admiration? Or fear? In his office, Trazak took his place behind his desk, the position of authority he'd used to intimidate countless cadets over the years. Anderson stood at perfect attention, her posture regulation perfect. "Explain yourself, Cadet." "Which part would you like me to explain, sir?" "Let's start with why Earth Command sent me a cadet who pretended to be mute for 3 weeks. Anderson's face remained neutral. "I wasn't pretending anything, sir. I was observing. Humans are new to the coalition. We learn differently than most species. I needed to understand how things work here before I could effectively participate. By hacking into secure systems and rewriting simulation parameters?" Trazak's voice rose. "That's not observation, Cadet. That's infiltration. With respect, sir, I didn't hack anything. I used the access I was given as a cadet. It's not my fault your systems have logical vulnerabilities that can be exploited through standard user interfaces." Trazak felt his temper flaring. "Do you have any idea how many regulations you have violated?" 17 by coalition standards, Anderson replied promptly. "Though under Earth Command protocols, my actions would be considered exemplary initiative." "This isn't Earth Command, Cadet." "No, sir. It's the Galactic Coalition Naval Academy, where officers are supposedly trained to think creatively and overcome impossible odds. Isn't that the purpose of the Apex Command program?" Trazak fell silent. She had him there, and they both knew it. "Tomorrow's challenge," he finally said. "What are you planning?" "Nothing outside parameters, sir. But I do intend to win. You and Cadet Drazine will be facing the most difficult scenario we have ever designed. Even with your unorthodox approach, you won't find a single-point solution." For the first time, Anderson's composure cracked slightly. A small twitch at the corner of her mouth. Was that amusement? "Permission to speak freely, sir." "Granted," Trazak said warily. "There's always a single-point solution. Always. Humans have been finding them throughout our history. It's what we do when faced with superior forces. Is that a threat, Cadet?" "No, sir. It's a promise. Tomorrow I will show you how humans fight when outmatched. And by the time I'm done, you will understand why Earth Command sent me here." Trazak leaned forward, his 3 eyes fixed on the human. "And why is that, Cadet Anderson?" "Because humans don't just want to join the coalition, Commander. We want to lead it. And after tomorrow you will see why we should." The silence that followed was electric. Trazak had trained the best military minds in the galaxy, but none had ever dared to speak to him with such confidence, such certainty. "Dismissed, Cadet," he finally said. As Anderson turned to leave, Trazak added, "One more thing. She paused at the door. Don't think for a moment that I will allow you to manipulate tomorrow's challenge the way you did today's simulation. Anderson turned back, and the look in her eyes sent another chill through Trazak's body. I'm counting on it, sir. A predictable enemy is already defeated. With that, she was gone, leaving Trazak alone with the disturbing realization that perhaps, for the first time in his career, he was facing a cadet he couldn't break, one who might, in fact, break him instead. The morning of the Apex Command Challenge dawned with an unusual tension buzzing through the Academy's corridors. News of Cadet Anderson's performance in the simulation lab had spread like quantum fire through the station, jumping from one cadet to another regardless of species rank, or previous alliance. Commander Trazak stood in the observation deck above the massive challenge arena, watching as technical staff made final adjustments to the environmental controls. The challenge would begin in 1 hour, and his mood had not improved since yesterday's confrontation. Systems check complete, Commander, reported Chief Engineer Lorva, her gelatinous form pulsing with the multiple colors that indicated satisfaction among her kind. The scenario is locked and secure. No external modifications possible. Triple check it, Trazak ordered. I want quantum-level encryption on all parameter controls. That human won't be pulling any tricks today. Already done, sir, Lorva's translucent body rippled. I even installed a physical cutoff switch that only you can activate. If anything unusual happens, you can terminate the simulation instantly. Trazak nodded, his 3 eyes scanning the arena below. Where are our contestants? Final briefing in Preparation Chamber 3, sir. All 11 teams, including Anderson and Drazin. And how's our Valerian cadet holding up? Still talking his face off? Lorva's colors shifted to the muted blue of amusement. Actually, sir, he's been unusually quiet this morning. Witnesses say he and Anderson had a private meeting late last night. Whatever she said to him has changed his demeanor. Trazak's scales tightened uncomfortably. I don't like this, Lorva. Not one bit. That human is up to something. If I may speak freely, sir. When Trazak nodded, Lorva continued, perhaps we should consider that Cadet Anderson represents a genuine tactical innovation. Humans are new to us, but their rapid advancement on their home planet suggests unique cognitive capabilities. Or just a dangerous level of aggression and cunning, Trazak countered. Remember what happened to the Proxians when they underestimated humans during first contact? The Proxians tried to conquer Earth, sir. We are trying to train a cadet. Sometimes I wonder if there's a difference, Trazak muttered. Below them, the first cadets began entering the arena, their various forms moving to their designated starting positions. The Apex Command Challenge was the pinnacle of the Academy's training program, a complex, multi-layered tactical exercise that simulated a coalition fleet response to a major galactic crisis. Each 2-cadet team would command a virtual battle group, with full authority to make strategic decisions within coalition protocols. This year's scenario was Trazak's masterpiece, a simultaneous attack by 3 hostile forces on a critical coalition hub world, complicated by a spatial anomaly that limited communications and reinforcement options. Success required perfect coordination, diplomatic finesse, and when necessary, overwhelming force. In 22 years, no team had ever achieved a perfect score. There they are, Lorva said, one of her appendages pointing toward the arena entrance. Cadet Drazin entered first, his tall blue form moving with the stiff formality typical of Valerians. But something was different about him today. The nervous energy, the constant movement of his 4 upper limbs was gone. Instead, he projected a calm certainty that was most un-Valerian. Behind him walked Cadet Anderson. The human female moved with that strange bipedal gait that still looked so unstable to Trazak's eyes. But there was a fluidity to her motion, a predatory grace that hadn't been apparent during her weeks of silence. Look at them, Trazak hissed. They are not even reviewing their tactical displays. Every other team is going over last-minute preparations, but these 2. They look confident, Lorva observed. They look arrogant, Trazak corrected. Begin the countdown sequence. Throughout the arena, holographic displays flared to life above each team's command station. A 60-second timer began to count down as the cadets took their positions. The observation deck filled with senior officers and instructors, all eager to witness the culmination of the training cycle. Lieutenant Krex arrived, taking his position at Trazak's side. All systems are green, Commander. Scenario parameters are locked and verified. Good, Trazak nodded. Keep a special eye on Team 6. I want to know every command Anderson inputs into the system. Yes, sir. Though I should note that we have assigned an advanced AI to monitor her specifically. If she attempts any unauthorized system access, we will know instantly. The countdown reached 0, and the simulation began. Around the arena, holographic starscapes bloomed above each command station, showing the initial crisis scenario. The cadets immediately began issuing orders, their hands and various appendages flying over control interfaces. At Station 6, Anderson and Drazin stood motionless, simply watching their display. What are they doing? Trazak demanded. Why aren't they responding? They haven't issued a single command, Krex confirmed, checking his data tablet. Their battle group is maintaining standard orbit around the hub world, but they have taken no defensive actions. Around them, the other teams were frantically deploying ships, raising shields and opening communications channels with the attacking forces. The scenario was designed to overwhelm with its complexity, too many threats coming from too many directions. 5 minutes passed. Anderson and Drazin remained still, whispering occasionally to each other but making no tactical moves. This is unprecedented, Lorva said. The Galoshian team has already lost 2 cruisers and the Mentor duo is engaged in full diplomatic negotiations. But Team 6 is just waiting. They will fail, Trazak said, but without the satisfaction he expected to feel. The scenario doesn't reward inaction. Within another 3 minutes, the first wave of attackers will reach their position. Sir, Krex interrupted, his voice puzzled, I'm detecting unusual readings from the spatial anomaly in their sector. What kind of readings? It's changing, becoming more stable. But that shouldn't be possible within the parameters we set. Trazak leaned forward, focusing all 3 eyes on the holographic display above Station 6. The swirling spatial anomaly that should have been blocking communications and reinforcements was indeed changing, its chaotic energies reorganizing into a more structured pattern. Are they hacking the system again? Trazak demanded. No, sir, Krex replied, bewildered. They haven't input any commands at all. The anomaly is changing on its own, almost as if. As if what, Lieutenant? As if it's responding to their inaction. Krex's antennae twitched in confusion. But that's not part of the programmed scenario. Below them, Anderson finally moved. She pressed a single control on her interface, a standard communication channel directed at all 3 attacking forces simultaneously. She's opening communications, Lorva reported. But she's not following protocol. Coalition guidelines require separate diplomatic approaches tailored to each species. What's she saying? Trazak asked, suddenly intensely curious. Nothing yet. The channel is open, but she's silent. The observation deck fell quiet as everyone focused on Team 6. Around the arena, other teams continued their frantic responses to the crisis, but all eyes kept darting toward Anderson and Drazin. Finally, Anderson spoke into the open channel. Her voice carried clearly through the observation deck speakers. This is Acting Fleet Commander Anderson of Coalition Battle Group Delta. We have been monitoring your approach and tactical formations. We have also analyzed the spatial anomaly you believe is protecting your movements. She paused, and Trazak found himself holding his breath. What you perceive as coalition vulnerability is a trap. The anomaly has been under our control from the beginning. It's not limiting our communications or reinforcements, it's masking them. On the holographic display, small changes began appearing in the anomaly's structure, revealing tiny signatures that looked like cloaked coalition ships. That's not possible, Trazak whispered. There are no hidden ships in the scenario. The system is generating them, Krex said, astonished. It's responding to her bluff, as if it were real. Anderson continued, "We have allowed your forces to commit fully to this attack for one reason, to expose all three of your species' military capabilities in a single operation. This intelligence is now being transmitted throughout Coalition space, but even if you were to succeed here, which you won't, retaliatory strikes against your homeworlds are now inevitable." The holographic attackers paused their advance. The simulation was responding to Anderson's psychological warfare. "You have 30 seconds to reverse course and power down weapons. After that, you will experience what humans call shock and awe." Beside her, Drazen finally moved, inputting a complex sequence of commands that caused their virtual fleet to shift into a new formation, one that Trazak had never seen before. It seemed nonsensical, placing their strongest defensive ships in apparently vulnerable positions. "What kind of formation is that?" Lorva asked. "It's not in any Coalition tactical manual," Krex confirmed. In the arena, the attacking forces in Team 6's simulation hesitated, their ships adjusting positions as the AI controlling them attempted to evaluate the unusual threat. 15 seconds, Anderson announced calmly. Trazak suddenly understood. "It's not about the formation," he said. "It's about creating confusion and uncertainty. The attackers can't evaluate the threat because they have never seen this approach before." 10 seconds. Throughout the observation deck, instructors and officers were now completely focused on Station 6, ignoring the other teams entirely. 5 seconds. The attacking ships began to retreat, their formations breaking apart as each species prioritized its own survival. "Stand down, confirmed," Anderson said, just as the 30-second deadline expired. "Coalition accepts your withdrawal. Future incursions will not be met with the same restraint." The holographic display above Station 6 flashed with the simulation results. Perfect score. Crisis resolved with no Coalition casualties, no loss of civilian life, and minimal resource expenditure. The observation deck erupted in astonished conversation. In the arena below, the other teams stared in disbelief at Anderson and Drazen, who simply began shutting down their station with calm efficiency. "They won," Lorva said, "without firing a single shot." "Impossible," Trazak muttered, but with less conviction than he would have liked. "Sir," Krex said, studying his data tablet, "the system logs are clear. They didn't hack or manipulate the simulation. The scenario responded to their tactics according to its programmed parameters. But the anomaly, the hidden ships. The anomaly's behavior was within its theoretical possibilities, just at the extreme ends of probability. As for the ships, the system interpreted Anderson's bluff as a valid tactical deception and responded accordingly. She essentially convinced the simulation that her lie was true through the sheer force of her conviction. Trazak felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of military service, complete tactical surprise. "But I want them in my office. Now." 10 minutes later, Anderson and Drazen stood at attention before Trazak's desk. The Valerian cadet's usual nervous energy was still noticeably absent, replaced by a calm confidence that mirrored his human partner's demeanor. "Explain yourselves," Trazak demanded. "We completed the challenge according to regulations, sir," Anderson replied. "No Coalition protocols were violated. You didn't even defend the hub world. You just stood there and talked." "Defense doesn't always require kinetic action, Commander," Drazen said, his voice lacking its usual rapid-fire delivery. "Cadet Anderson taught me that sometimes the most powerful weapon is the enemy's uncertainty. And that formation. What Coalition tactical manual did you pull that from?" "It's called the Crazy Yvonne, sir," Anderson said. "An old human naval maneuver, modified for space combat. It appears irrational because it is irrational, by conventional standards. Its purpose is not to optimize defense but to create confusion and doubt." Trazak leaned back in his chair, his 3 hearts beating in discordant rhythm. "In 22 years running this program, I have never seen anything like what you two did today." "Thank you, sir," they responded in unison. "That wasn't a compliment," Trazak snapped. The Apex Command program is designed to train officers in coalition protocols and tactics. Not whatever this was. With respect, Commander, Anderson said, the program's stated goal is to develop officers who can respond effectively to any crisis. The methods aren't specified. Cadet Anderson showed me that we have been limited by our traditional approaches, Drazen added. The Valerian military has 18 different combat formations, all developed over thousands of years. But none of them include the possibility of winning without engagement. Because that's not winning, Trazak insisted. It's avoiding the fight. Is the objective to fight, sir? Anderson asked quietly. Or to achieve the mission with minimal losses? The question hung in the air between them, and Trazak found himself without an immediate answer. Commander, Anderson continued, her tone softening slightly, humans haven't survived as long as we have by being stronger than our predators. Earth is filled with creatures that could kill us easily in direct combat. We survived by outthinking them, by changing the rules of engagement. And that's what you think the Coalition needs? Humans to change our rules? I think the Coalition needs every tactical advantage it can get, she replied. The galaxy is vast, and we have only explored a fraction of it. What happens when we encounter a species that outmatches our combined technological capabilities? Will traditional formations and protocols save us then? Drazen stepped forward. Sir, I have studied Valerian military history my entire life. We once faced extinction because we couldn't adapt our tactics quickly enough to counter a new threat. If Cadet Anderson had been with us then, perhaps millions of my people wouldn't have died. Trazak studied the two cadets before him, seeing them truly for the first time. Drazen, a product of one of the most rigid military cultures in the Coalition, now advocating for tactical innovation. And Anderson, the human who had observed in silence for weeks before demonstrating a completely different approach to conflict resolution. The human approach wouldn't work in every scenario, Trazak said finally. No, sir, Anderson agreed. Sometimes you have to fight. Humans know that better than most, our history is filled with violence. But we have learned that the best victory is the one where you never have to fire a shot. Because you have convinced your enemy they can't win, Trazak said, understanding dawning. Exactly, sir. Fear of the unknown is universal. Every species, no matter how advanced, hesitates when faced with uncertainty. That's the leverage point we use today. Trazak was silent for a long moment, his military mind processing the implications of what he'd witnessed. Finally, he stood. Cadet Anderson, you came here to learn Coalition tactics. Instead, you have taught us something about human warfare. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that. Permission to speak freely, sir? Granted. I did learn Coalition tactics. I spent 3 weeks studying every lecture, every simulation, every historical battle in your databases. I learned your way of fighting. She paused. And then I showed you ours. The silent observation, Trazak realized. You were gathering intelligence. I was learning the battlefield, she corrected. Just as I was taught. Trazak moved to the window overlooking the academy grounds, watching cadets from dozens of species moving between buildings, but each bringing their own evolutionary history and cultural approach to warfare. The Apex Command graduation ceremony is tomorrow, he said. Traditionally, I announce which cadet has earned the highest honors and will receive accelerated promotion. Anderson and Drazen remained at attention, waiting. For the first time in 22 years, I find myself at a loss, Trazak continued. The metrics say you two have earned the highest score in program history. But you achieved it by essentially ignoring everything we teach here. Not ignoring, sir, Anderson said, expanding. Trazak turned back to face them. Maybe that's what the Coalition needs. Expansion of tactics, not just territory. He straightened to his full height. Congratulations, cadets. You have earned top honors. And you have given me much to consider about the future of this program. Thank you, sir, they responded. Dismissed. And Cadet Anderson? Yes, Commander? Next time Earth Command sends us a human cadet, Perhaps they could include a warning. For the first time, Anderson's serious expression broke into a genuine smile. With respect, sir, that would defeat the purpose. The most effective weapons are the ones your opponent doesn't see coming. After they left, Trazak sat heavily in his chair, his scaled skin cooling as his body processed the stress of the day. Lieutenant Krex entered a few minutes later, data tablet in hand. "The final report, sir," Krex said, "and a communication from Coalition High Command. They witnessed the challenge remotely and are impressed with the human cadet's performance. They are requesting a full analysis of her tactics for distribution to other training facilities." "Of course they are," Trazak sighed. "Tell them I will prepare it personally." "There's more, sir? They are fast-tracking a program to integrate more human cadets into Coalition academies. Starting next cycle, we will be receiving 5 new human trainees." Trazak closed all 3 of his eyes briefly. 5 silent humans, watching our every move and planning who knows what. "Actually, sir," Krex said, his voice tinged with amusement, "High Command suggests we might want to modify our training approach based on today's demonstration. They seem quite taken with human tactical philosophy." "Are they indeed?" Trazak opened his eyes. "Well, Lieutenant, it seems the future of Coalition warfare may be changing faster than we anticipated." "Is that a bad thing, sir?" Trazak considered the question, remembering Anderson's confident stance and unwavering certainty. "I'm not sure yet. But one thing is clear." "Sir?" "Well, the humans aren't here to follow. They are here to lead." Trazak picked up the data tablet, studying the perfect score that shouldn't have been possible. "And after today, I'm not entirely convinced that's a bad thing." Outside Trazak's office, Cadet Maya Anderson walked beside her Valerian partner, both still processing their victory. "Will it always work?" Drazen asked quietly. "This human approach of yours?" Anderson shook her head. "Not always, but often enough to give us an edge. And in my experience, sometimes an edge is all you need." "You weren't really silent because you were studying us, were you?" Drazen asked suddenly. "There was more to it." Anderson smiled. "Let's just say humans understand the power of a grand entrance. Sometimes you have to let them underestimate you before you show them what you are really capable of." "Clever," Drazen admitted. "Manipulative, but clever." "That's humans for you," Anderson replied with a small shrug. "We are not the strongest, fastest, or most technologically advanced species in the Coalition, but we might just be the most surprising." And as they walked through the academy halls, other cadets watched them pass with new respect and, perhaps, just a touch of fear. Exactly as Anderson had planned from the very beginning.